afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. There's a troubling pattern emerging in amongst government officials in America's bluest states that are predominantly Democrat, where they're punishing religious organizations and individuals for simply living out their faith and thereby the identity that the faith compels them to. Joining me to have a conversation about this is my friend Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, legal analyst for EWTN News and director of the Conscience Project. Follow her work on Twitter, X, at Bayer Picciotti, or visit conscience-project.org. Andrea, thank you for joining us once again. How are you?
I'm doing well, Marcus. How are you?
I'm very, very well, and joyous to reconnect with you. And as usual, these stories, they would alarm us, except for the fact that God is in control, and we have quite a sound constitution. So please give us big picture. What's going on here?
Yeah, Marcus, I think it is important to see the big picture, right? Because we can see trends, and those trends remind us that sometimes ideology is kind of the priority for certain elected officials and lawmakers, and it's coming up against these protected freedoms that we have, particularly religious freedom and freedom of speech. And in most recent years, the progressive ideologies are going against people of faith and organizations, faith-based charities and churches. We can go through the list, and I find it kind of interesting. Obviously people will see that a pro-abortion movement, especially after Dobbs, but even before the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, many states that were pushing abortion upon their residents were really trying to silence people that were offering women alternatives. And the best example of that is the state of California. People, your listeners may be aware of a lawsuit going on right now against two faith-based organizations that have been directing women to abortion reversal. And this is where women that are taking medical abortions, medicated abortions, there are two pills in the abortion cocktail, and there's an option after you take your first pill to reverse the damage by getting progesterone. And these organizations are basically trying to give women the choice, women that are having kind of regrets for getting on that path towards medication abortion, and they're being sued by the state of California. This isn't the first time that pro-life organizations, especially faith-based pro-life organizations, have been tempted to be muzzled by the state of California. This is just an interesting way because they're proposing to inflict up to $20 million in penalties on Heartbeat International and Real Options, two Christian nonprofits.
California is obviously the clearest example, but the reality is we're seeing this being made manifest in other blue states. Just give us that image as well, please.
Yeah, it's interesting, and every time that happens, usually things end up in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court slaps these efforts down. So just like when I was mentioning the state of California was rebuked several years ago when they tried to force pro-life centers to promote the state's abortion services, the Supreme Court said, hey, that violates the constitutional protection against compelled speech. That also was the case this past term, where the Attorney General from New Jersey was going after First Choice Women's Resource Center, a Christian pro-life center in the state, using administrative subpoenas, which basically would have handicapped the organization so they couldn't serve women, but instead were having to respond to, baseless requests for information about their donors without any kind of indication of fraud or deceit. The Supreme Court said that the pro-life groups could go to federal court to vindicate their constitutional rights, that they didn't have to wait for the state proceedings, which would drag them out and basically render the group penniless in defending at the state level. So that was, a great win. Unfortunately, Marcus, it's not just abortion ideology. We can also see that the constant attack against the Little Sisters of the Poor in the state of Pennsylvania, also Catholic nuns in the state of New York being pushed to embrace gender ideology, or most recently assisted suicide. And these groups, God bless them, continue to stand up for the truth and continue to say that their mission can't be one that's separated from Catholic teaching or their Christian beliefs.
The reality of the matter is, every time this happens, the Supreme Court, like you mentioned, shuts it down, but we see a tremendous amount of financial and just practical effort put in for the sake of litigating the issue, just trying the issue all the way to the highest courts before it gets shut down.
Yes, and I mean, in many respects, this is a distraction from the mission of these groups, whether we're talking about the Little Sisters of the Poor or preschools, Catholic preschools in the state of Colorado. You know, their work should be attending to the elderly poor or teaching, the young, and they're having to go to court. What's kind of wonderful is God will never let us outdo him in generosity, right? So their courage and their bravery has given them a chance really to explain what it is that they do and the beautiful contributions that they make. And I think that that's an amazing way to catechize many people who don't understand, for example, why the church teaches against contraception, or why the church teaches about the dignity of the human person and our sexual identity as being made male and female, made for one another. And so I think that this is kind of where God's always going to have the last say, even if it can be a long, drawn-out litigation. He's always going to give the opportunity for believers and for the truth to shine through.
Now, in that light, and given what you've just shared, we would be remiss if we thought of these things as isolated cases, when in reality, like you were mentioning at the beginning, it's good that we see a grander pattern. Share with us about that as an exhortation.
Yeah, I think, Marcus, it is kind of a brazen attack against faith in America, and also a brazen attack against the rule of law, right? Because we do have under the Constitution a guarantee for the free exercise of religion, a guarantee for free speech, which also is involved in many of these instances where people of faith are being told to be quiet. And so I think that it's kind of a coming to a head moment where ideology is trying to erase the protections that aren't just for people of faith. And so you don't need to be Christian or Catholic, for that matter, to be able to defend the rights of the Little Sisters of the Poor. And occasionally, not always, but occasionally, some groups that are not typically aligned with Catholic teaching will see that the rule that protects, for example, the Little Sisters or First Choice Pregnancy Center will protect their organizations as well, and they'll stand up and speak in defense of them. So I think that in many ways, with a country that's so often divided, these guaranteed protections that we have are ones that should and often do bring people together. It doesn't mean, though, that the challenges are not going to be over anytime soon, but it does mean that we've got a deep bench. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a great opportunity to evangelize and educate on the truth that we hold dear. And
with this opportunity to evangelize and educate too, you and I have talked about this in the past, we have to make ourselves students of what heritage we have and to be appreciative of it so that we can exercise and defend it. Andrea, thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks for having me on, Marcus. Enjoy your afternoon.
You too. My guest has been Andrea Picciotti-Bayer. She is legal analyst for EWTN News. You can follow her work at Bayer Picciotti. She's director of the Conscience Project, and she's been talking about attacks from blue states on religious freedom. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.